Good morning. We are having another sunny, bright day here in Arad, and we are continuing with a look at government versus religion, and we're focusing in
This is
on,
part five.
yes, Frank reminds me this is part 5, and we are focusing on how God is setting up a nation with the goal of bringing his kingdom to earth, his government to earth. And it's unlike what we think that the UN is trying to set up. So we're way back at the beginning where it's all starting to form. And last week I showed how Ephraim and Manasseh would have a part as that of Joseph, and that Judah would have the right to rule here in Israel. And eventually, the peoples of the earth will come to get the wisdom they need to set up their governments. Okay? So today, I would like to look at a couple of scriptures, and the first one is in Genesis 46, verse 2. We have Jacob's son Joseph in Egypt, and he's the ruler, and he's delivering the world from a famine. And this is the second time that his brothers have come and have gone back now, and they've told their father that they found out that that Joseph was alive, and so they're trying to get Jacob to go down. And during the night, he's already made the decision, but there must still be some fear in his heart about it. And during the night, in verse 2, God called to Israel in a vision by night, Jacob, Jacob. He answered, here. Probably it says, Hine, that would be hear mine. And he said, I am God, the God of your father. Fear not to go down to Egypt, for I will make you there into a great nation. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I myself will also bring you back, and Joseph's hands shall close your eyes. Well, there's several things there that are very interesting. First of all, we have to see here that Jacob has a relationship with God. This is personal. This is not religion. He hears God speaking to him, and then he responds back. The other thing is that shows its relationship is God is going to go with him. And he says, I'm going to make you into a nation. There's the promise again. There's nothing about added blessings or all these other things that are part of it. But
make a great religion.
What's that?
Or make a great religion.
Or make a great religion, yes. But he says, I'm going to come back with you. And in other words, you're going to come back to this land because that's part of where I'm going to put my nation. But Jacob did not go back as a live person.
That's right.
He went back as a corpse. So how does he go back as a live person? He goes back with his son, through his sons.
Okay.
And I can show you now that the next verse, how that is a part of it. So it's true that Joseph closed his eyes, but that was in Egypt. He closed his eyes in Egypt, and before you know it, he opens his eyes in Israel, or in the land of Israel, Canaan at that time, and that's a process. But I want to say, I don't want to go into all the process of God bringing them out.
Right.
But we know that when people suffer together, they also become unified.
Right.
So God was going to make his nation, it's like Egypt is the womb, in which he makes this nation. And then they are expelled, and it's traumatic, just like birth.
Yeah.
So, in trying to get them out, God has to do some things to Pharaoh. And he tells Moses what he's going to have him say. He says he's going to stiffen his heart so that he won't let the people go. And then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says Hashem, Israel is my firstborn son. Okay, there's Israel. Israel's there in Egypt. He's not dead. He's alive in his sons. And he treats these 12 sons and their descendants as one entity, as though they are a person. And he says, this is my firstborn son. Now, why wasn't Isaac a firstborn son? And why wasn't Abraham called his firstborn son? Because they had a division. Isaac was going to get the blessing. Ishmael would not get the same blessing. He was told he'd be in a nation, but it wasn't specifically the one that would bring the kingdom of God on earth. Isaac would be the next one that would receive the blessing. But Isaac had a division. Only Jacob got the blessing to bring the kingdom of God on earth. The blessing of Abraham, where I will make you a great nation and you will bless the nations. Through you, the nations will be blessed. So that's why Jacob, when he gets changed to Israel, becomes the son.
Okay.
So he says, let my son go that he may worship me. Now, worship does not mean necessarily religion. Worship means I have a relationship with you. We're going to talk together. We're going to, you're going to become a nation, and I'm going to live with you. That's what we find in Exodus.
And how does he want us to live?
Yeah, well, then that's the next step. So we go through a series of traumatic things to get them out of Egypt. And I want to show you how it was not a religion, but it was a bonding to God. Okay, so he says in Exodus 12 and 13, he gives them instructions as to how they're going to leave. And he says to them, if you do exactly as I say, that is, they had to kill the god of Egypt, which was a firstborn male lamb or goat. And you have to paint its blood on the doorpost. And you have to stay in there, inside your house, the night that you're leaving. You have to roast the lamb. You can't cook it any other way. You have to eat it all. And you have to have your clothes on ready to leave. And there was various instructions as to how all of this was going to happen. If they followed all these instructions, their firstborn will not be killed, and he'll take them out of Israel to the desert where they would worship him. So one of the things he says in chapter 13, I believe it is, I should have had this marked. He says, if you do these things exactly as I've told you, it will be a mark on your hand and on your forehead. And it's the last verse, or no, it's not the last, it's chapter 13:16. And so it shall be a sign upon your hand and a symbol on your forehead that with a mighty hand I freed you from Egypt. So this marks them as his particular people. It's like a sheep getting a brand. I branded you. Now, was there an actual mark? No. It was what they did that marks your hand, and what you thought. In other words, you took into account everything I said and you did it. So that marks them, okay?
So he took them not from a religion but from a government and marked them to be a new government in a way.
Yeah, that's right. He took them out of one government, and now he's making them into his government.
And they're marked for that.
And they're marked for that. And only those who are willing to do exactly what he said will be in his government. Now, it's really no different than Adam getting one instruction of a negative or a positive where he had to make a choice. You do this, and you live.
Yeah.
You do that, and you're out of here. And this land has been spitting people out ever since that do not want to do things God's way. I won't get into how we happen to not have people doing things God's way and are still living here, but that's at the getting close to the end, okay? So they did exactly what God said, and so they're marked. And I don't know how many minutes have gone by, Frank. Do you know? 5? Oh, so we have, good. We have a little more time. So they get out to the desert, and they go through a traumatic thing with the Egyptians trying to take them back. But they managed to follow God all the way out, and it took a bit of faith, or they had to conjure up a bit of faith to do this. And they get to the mountain where God's going to give them a contract or a covenant, make a covenant with them. That's the marriage relationship. They're his people. He courted them. They're going to have a relationship now with him that's closer than any relationship. They hear the words of God from the mountain, all of them, the same words. And this really bonds them together.
Yeah, big thing.
And they hear these words, they're so terrifying that God says he allowed that so that they would put their trust in everything that Moses told them to do, and that he was really speaking. But they could have had that relationship personally if they had been willing to listen to the noise and the words coming out of his mouth. But they got scared and said, "Oh, we can't listen to God, it'll kill us." And they said, "Moses, you listen to God and tell us what he says." So they agreed to the 10 words that they heard coming from the mountain. And then God calls Moses up to the top of the mountain to get it written down on tablets. This is the covenant relationship. So everything goes fine till towards the end, and they say, well, he was supposed to be only up there 40 days, and he's a little bit late. And they decide, not all of them, about 3,000 of them, decide we've got to have a God that takes us to this promised land. Other than this Moses. This Moses isn't doing it. He must have died up there.
This government's not going to work. Why not the Egyptian?
Okay, I'm going to show you how at this point they begin to slide into religion rather than relationship, and we'll start that next week.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Very good.
Bye-bye.